A single gesture can shatter a lifetime. For 24 years, Clara Jenkins had navigated a world of quiet hardship. Her life a blur of lukewarm coffee and stained aprons. For 58 years, Sterling Blackwood had conquered that same world. His life a fortress of cold steel and colder transactions. They existed in different universes until one Tuesday night at Manhattan's most exclusive restaurant. The billionaire rolled up his sleeve to check his platinum watch, and the waitress saw it. A tiny, perfect crescent moon, a birthmark she'd only ever seen in a faded photograph of a father she'd never known. The world stopped, and three words tumbled from her lips, about to detonate everything. "Sir, my father." The Obsidian Room wasn't so much a restaurant as a testament to power. Perched 60 floors above New York City, its floor-to-ceiling windows framed the skyline like a captured god. Clara Jenkins felt her soul being absorbed nightly. At 24, she wore her exhaustion like a second uniform. Her life was a frantic, punishing rhythm. Pre-dawn shifts at a greasy spoon diner in Queens, afternoon classes at community college, and nights spent here balancing trays for people who spent more on a single meal than she made in a month. Every dollar was a soldier in the endless war against her mother's medical bills and the rent on their tiny drafty apartment. Tonight, her station included Table 7, occupied by Sterling Blackwood. He was not just a billionaire. He was a titan who moved markets with a whisper and dismantled corporations with a penstroke. Clara approached with the practiced invisibility of a seasoned waitress. He didn't look at her. His gaze was fixed on the city below. "Sparkling water, no ice. And bring me the market analysis report," he said, his voice gravel and devoid of any human inflection. For the next hour, she existed only in his periphery, a ghost materializing to refill his glass or clear a plate. The moment that changed everything was mundane. As he finished his meal, Sterling Blackwood spilled a drop of water on his French cuff. He pushed the chair back, unfastened the diamond cufflink, and rolled up his sleeve. And there it was, on his inner wrist, stark against the pale skin, a birthmark. A perfect, elegant crescent moon, the color of milky coffee. Clara froze. The tray in her hand trembled. Her breath hitched. In her worn wallet was a photograph, the only one she had. A young smiling woman with Clara's eyes held a swaddled infant. Beside her, a man's arm was wrapped around her shoulder. His face was out of frame, but on his wrist, clearly visible, was that same mark, the crescent moon. Her mother, Evelyn, lost in the fog of a cruel neurological disease, used to trace the shape in the photo. "Your father," she would whisper. "Stephen, he had the moon on his wrist. Said he'd catch it for me one day." Stephen, not Sterling. But the mark, it was identical. The desperate hope of a girl who had grown up with a gaping hole where a father should be was a far more powerful force than her training. She walked back to his table, her heart hammering. "Sir," her voice was a reedy whisper. He finally lifted his head, his eyes the color of cold slate, utterly devoid of curiosity. "What is it?" She pointed a trembling finger towards his exposed wrist. "That mark, the birthmark on your wrist." His eyes narrowed. "What about it?" The words felt like stones in her mouth. "Sir, my father, he had the same birthmark." Sterling Blackwood stared at her. The silence that followed was absolute. Then his expression hardened into pure dismissive contempt. "Is this some kind of shakedown? How much do you want to go away?" The accusation was a physical blow. "No," she stammered. "No, it's not like that. I have a photo. My mother." "I don't care about your mother or your photographs," he cut in. "You have 5 seconds to get away from my table before I have you not only fired, but blacklisted from every restaurant in this city." He stood up, towering over her. He dropped a few crisp $100 bills on the table. "Don't ever speak to me again," he said, turning his back and striding out without a second glance. Clara stood frozen, the entire restaurant's attention now fixed on her. The manager was already power walking towards her, his face a mask of panic. The hope that had soared so violently in her chest had plummeted, leaving a cold, aching void. The black sedan sliced through the rain-slicked streets. Inside, Sterling Blackwood stared out at the blurred city lights. But he wasn't seeing them. He was seeing the face of a waitress, frightened, earnest, and utterly preposterous. In his world, people didn't approach him with heartfelt confessions. They approached him with angles. Everyone wanted something. But the words echoed in the silent car, refusing to be dismissed. My father. He had the same birthmark. He hated the birthmark. For his entire adult life, he had viewed it as a flaw. He wore long-sleeved shirts, even in summer, to conceal it. It was a vestige of a life he had systematically erased, a life before he was Sterling Blackwood. He poured himself a scotch and walked to the window. He rolled up his sleeve and stared at the crescent moon on his wrist. The past came unbidden in sharp, painful fragments. He wasn't Sterling Blackwood then. He was Stephen Blake, 19 years old, with nothing but a scholarship to Columbia and a fury to escape grinding poverty. And there was Evelyn. He remembered her as a feeling. The scent of cheap shampoo and sunshine in her hair, the warmth of her hand in his. They had been kids fueled by cheap coffee and arrogant belief that their love was indestructible. She'd traced the birthmark on his wrist one afternoon. "It's your own private moon," she'd said. A promise of light in the dark. Then came the narrative he had clung to for 35 years, that she had left him. He'd had to drop out of school for a semester when his father had a stroke. He returned to New York desperate to see her, only to be told by her roommate that she was gone. He wrote letters. They went unanswered. Eventually, pride and searing pain turned his love to ash. He concluded she had wanted someone with better prospects. That betrayal became the fuel for his ascent. He changed his name, clawed his way into finance, and buried Stephen Blake forever. But the waitress, Clara, she had Evelyn's eyes. "It's a scam," he growled to the empty room. "It has to be." But the seed of doubt had been planted. The next morning, he summoned his lawyer. Arthur Vance had been with Sterling for 30 years. "I have a delicate situation," Sterling began, recounting the incident. "I want you to find out who she is. Her name is Clara Jenkins. Find out everything. Where she lives, who her mother is. I want leverage." Arthur made a note. "Consider it done. We'll have a file on her by the end of the day." But as Arthur left, Sterling found himself walking to the hidden safe behind a painting. He hadn't opened it in over 3 decades. Inside was a small worn wooden box. He lifted the lid. Inside was a single dog-eared photograph, a young Stephen Blake grinning, his arm around a laughing Evelyn, and a cheap silver locket with a tiny crescent moon etched on it. He stared at the photo of the woman he had loved, the woman who had shattered him. Then he thought of the waitress, of her desperate eyes. Eyes that were an exact echo of the ones in the photograph. The doubt was no longer a seed. It was a living, breathing thing. He had built his empire on the bedrock of her betrayal. But what if the bedrock was sand? What if for 35 years he had been wrong? The termination was swift and impersonal. Mr. Du Bois called Clara into his office the next morning. "I'm sorry, Clara. We have a standard of conduct. Mr. Blackwood is our most important client. An incident was reported. Your final paycheck is in the envelope." The loss of the job was catastrophic. It was the highest paying of her 3, the one that kept the lights on. Days turned into a week of frantic searching. Every restaurant she applied to seemed to have an opening until they called her references. The name Blackwood was a silent poison. The eviction notice taped to her door was no longer a threat. It was a promise point. One rainy afternoon, she went through her mother's old things, looking for documents. In the back of a dusty closet was a battered shoebox. Inside was a lifetime of memories. There were dried flowers, a concert ticket stub, and a stack of letters tied with a faded ribbon. Clara's hands trembled as she untied it. The letters were from her mother addressed to Stephen Blake in Boston. They were never sent. The envelopes were still sealed. She opened the first one, dated a month after Clara was born. "My dearest Stephen, I don't know if you'll ever get this. I came back to New York and you were gone. Stephen, something wonderful has happened. We have a daughter. I named her Clara. She's so beautiful. I know things were a mess when you left, but please come back. I love you. We need you." Clara read on, letter after letter, a chronicle of hope fading into despair. Evelyn wrote about getting a job, about Clara's first smile, about moving to a cheaper apartment. "Stephen, it's been a year. Are you getting my letters? Did I do something wrong? Please, just let me know you're alive." The final letter was written 2 years later. "I have to stop. I can't do this anymore. I have to believe you left for a reason, that you didn't want us. I will always love the boy who promised me the moon, but I have to let him go. Goodbye, Stephen." Tucked at the bottom was the original photograph. On the back, in her mother's script, "Stephen and Evelyn, Central Park, 1988, the day he gave me the locket." Clara sat on the floor and wept. Sterling Blackwood was Stephen Blake. He hadn't just left. He had erased himself, changed his name, and built a new world on the ashes of the old one. The humiliation she felt curdled into cold anger. This wasn't about his money. This was about the truth. Meanwhile, Genevieve Reed, a private investigator, stared at her computer screen. Sterling Blackwood's request was typical: investigate a potential nuisance. But as she dug, the word nuisance felt inadequate. Clara Jenkins was clean. No criminal record, no history of scams. The real story began with Clara's mother, Evelyn Jenkins. She found her in a state-run nursing home in the Bronx. The diagnosis was frontal dementia, aggressive and advanced. The key came from cross-referencing old records. She found a former roommate who remembered Stephen Blake. Evelyn was heartbroken, the woman said. But then this older, wealthy man started showing up. Said he was a family friend. He told Evelyn that Stephen had met someone else in Boston and wanted nothing to do with her or the baby. Did this man have a name? Genevieve asked. Robert Croft. His daughter was Victoria Croft. Genevieve's blood ran cold. Victoria Croft, now Victoria Blackwood, Sterling's wife of 32 years. She pulled financial records. Sterling's first major investment came from a seed fund managed by Croft Enterprises. He had married the boss's daughter. The final piece required hacking into archives of a defunct mail forwarding service. She found records of dozens of letters addressed to Stephen Blake at his family's Boston address, all returned to sender. And then a change of service request signed by Robert Croft instructing that any mail from Evelyn's address be redirected to a P.O. box that was closed a year later. The letters were intercepted. All of them. This wasn't a coincidence or a grift. It was a conspiracy orchestrated by Sterling's wife and father-in-law. They had engineered his disappearance, silenced Evelyn, and built an empire on their lies. Arthur Vance listened to Genevieve's report in his soundproof office. He felt a profound chill. He had served Sterling for 3 decades. Now he was learning that the foundation of his client's life was a meticulously crafted lie. He picked up his phone. I have the report on the Jenkins girl. But it's complicated. You need to see this in person. Sterling arrived within the hour. So, is she a fraud? Arthur slid the file across the desk. She's not a fraud, Sterling. She is very likely your daughter. Sterling's face remained impassive, but a muscle feathered in his cheek. He opened the file. He saw Clara's birth certificate, records of her hardscrabble life, a photo of Evelyn Jenkins taken last week, the vibrant girl from his memories replaced by a frail, hollow-eyed woman. Then he got to the summary of the deception. Robert Croft's interference. The lies told to Evelyn. The mail redirection. Finally, he saw Victoria Croft's name tied to the entire scheme. The silence stretched taut. Sterling read the final page, then read it again. He had built his world on the belief that Evelyn had abandoned him. That pain had been the engine of his ambition. Now he was the fool. He slowly closed the file. She knew, he said, his voice flat, deadly. Victoria, she knew the entire time. It appears so, Arthur said softly. Sterling remembered. Robert Croft had taken him out for a drink. He'd been kind, paternal. He'd said he had a friend who'd heard Evelyn was seeing a new man with money. He'd advised young Stephen to forget her and focus on his future, a future Robert and Victoria could help him build. It had been the final nail in the coffin of his hope. The calm on Sterling's face finally shattered. He stood up and swept his arm across Arthur's desk, sending papers and a lamp crashing to the floor. 35 years, he roared. 35 years of my life. My daughter. I have a daughter who has struggled for everything while I. He looked at Arthur, his eyes burning with cold, terrifying fire. Where is she? At a gala for the Children's Health Foundation, Arthur said. At the museum. Sterling turned and strode out without another word. He wasn't just going to confront his wife. He was going to war with the very lie his life had been built upon. The charity gala was a shimmering tableau of New York's elite. Victoria Blackwood moved through it like a queen. She was accepting an award when she saw him. Sterling was standing at the entrance, not in a tuxedo, but in the suit he'd been wearing all day. He was a thundercloud in a room of champagne bubbles. Victoria glided towards him, her smile never faltering. Sterling, darling, what's wrong? We're leaving, he said, his voice low and guttural. Don't be ridiculous. I'm being honored in 20 minutes. The honor has been revoked, he said, taking her arm in a painfully tight grip. He propelled her through the crowd and out into the cold night. The ride back was suffocating silence. When they entered the apartment, he threw the file onto the coffee table. Explain this. Victoria stared at the file. The pretense fell away. I don't know what you're talking about. Evelyn Jenkins, Sterling snarled. Stephen Blake. Intercepted letters. Do I need to continue? Victoria paled. My father, it was his idea. He was protecting our future. Protecting? You call this protecting? You let me believe she abandoned me. You let me believe I didn't have a child. She was nobody, Victoria shot back. A poor student from nowhere. She would have been an anchor. My father saw your potential. We gave you the world. You stole my world, he roared. You stole my daughter. She wasn't your child in any meaningful way, Victoria insisted. We made you into Sterling Blackwood. You owe it all to me and my father. That was the moment he broke. My name was Stephen Blake, he whispered. And I think he was a better man than this. Get out, he said quietly. Pack a bag. I want you out of my house by morning. The marriage is over. At that same moment, across the city, Clara sat by her mother's bedside in the nursing home. Evelyn was having a rare, lucid evening. My sweet girl, Evelyn whispered. You look so tired. I'm okay, Mom. I was dreaming about the park with Stephen, Evelyn said. He gave me a locket with a moon on it. He said he had one, too. He promised he'd always come back. Her eyes focused on Clara with sudden intensity. The crescent moon. Did you find it? Clara began to sob. In that moment, she knew what she had to do. This was about giving her mother one last piece of peace. It was about showing a man named Stephen Blake what he had truly lost. Sterling Blackwood drove through the night. Victoria was gone. He had one goal now. He found Clara's apartment, a rundown building in Queens. He knocked. After a long moment, the door opened. Clara peered out, her eyes red-rimmed. When she saw him, shock and anger flashed across her face. What do you want? Clara, may I please come in? We need to talk. We have nothing to talk about. Please, he said, the word raw. I know everything. About the letters, about my wife, about her father. I was wrong. God, I was so wrong. His anguish made her pause. She had nothing left to lose. She opened the door. They lied to me, Clara, he said. They told me your mother left me for someone else. I believed them. I let my pride blind me. I need you to know I didn't know you existed. I swear I never knew. Clara searched his face for deception. All she saw was a broken man. She's sick. My mother. She has dementia. Sterling flinched. I know. Where is she? A nursing home in the Bronx. Take me to her, he said. Please, I need to see her. They found Evelyn's room. She was asleep, her breathing shallow. Sterling stopped in the doorway. This frail woman was the vibrant girl from his memories. He slowly walked to her bedside and gently touched her hair. At his touch, Evelyn's eyes fluttered open. They were cloudy, unfocused. Evelyn, he whispered. It's me. It's Stephen. Her gaze remained distant. Heartbreak washed over his face. He sank into the chair, took her frail hand. I'm so sorry. I should have come back. I should have fought for you. As he spoke, he unconsciously turned his hand. The crescent moon caught the moonlight. Evelyn's cloudy eyes suddenly focused. Her gaze dropped to his wrist. Her fingers tightened on his. A flicker of memory sparked. Stephen, she whispered clearly. You came back. You caught the moon for me. She squeezed his hand, her eyes locking with his in pure recognition. Then, as quickly as it came, the light faded. Her eyes clouded over again, but the smile remained. Sterling sat there, his body shaking with silent sobs. He had been given a gift, one moment of grace where he was forgiven. Clara watched from the doorway, tears rolling down her cheeks. In the quiet room, a father and daughter finally truly met for the first time. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. Evelyn was moved to a world-class care facility. Sterling spared no expense. He formally acknowledged Clara as his daughter. He called a press conference and told an honest version of the story. He introduced Clara, who stood beside him with a strength that made him prouder than any deal ever had. Life for Clara transformed, but not in fairy tale ways. She didn't move into the penthouse. She insisted on finishing her semester at community college. She was determined to build a life on her own terms. The relationship between them was delicate, taking tentative steps. They met for coffee. They walked through Central Park. She told him stories of Evelyn. He learned about her resilience, her independence. She learned about the driven, wounded young man he once was. The divorce from Victoria was surgically precise. Stripped of the Blackwood name and much of her wealth, She became a social pariah. One autumn afternoon, Sterling and Clara stood on the balcony of the new foundation he had established in Evelyn's name, dedicated to neurological research. She would have loved this, Clara said. I know, Sterling replied. She was always the one who wanted to fix things. He turned to her. You're a lot like her. He rolled up his sleeve, no longer hiding the crescent moon. I can't get back the years we lost, Clara, but I promise you, I will spend the rest of my life trying to earn the ones we have left. Clara looked at this man, her father, and for the first time didn't just see a billionaire or a painful past. She saw Stephen, a man who had lost his way and was finally finding his way back. She smiled and took his hand. It wasn't a perfect ending, but it was a beginning. And for both of them, it was more than they had ever dared to hope for.